Hello there. This is Gilberto Debelian, broadcasting from Oslo, Norway, and I'm going to talk to you about the newly launched Rooter X4000. I mean, this motor, it's the most advanced motor that FKG has launched so far. And not only that, but in my clinical experience that had been an endodontist for almost 35 years, absolutely this motor is amazing. This motor has almost everything I need for my treatment and will allow me to focus on the treatment while my assistant will be changing the programs of it. And I'm going to explain you why. First and foremost, this motor contains two units, the base, which contains the motor itself, and the unit with the software. So these two will be talking to each other, and despite the fact that the base can be away from the unit will continue talking to the motor. And that's very interesting because, well, first, this motor here, it's a very lightweight, has a very small head, and in the head there is a light, which can in fact turn off if you use microscope and so on. But as opposed to, for instance, the X3000, which is an excellent motor, this 4000 has no display here. All the display, all the communication, and all the programs are into the software, and as opposed to the X3000, that, by the way, is an excellent motor. So what's the difference? It is basically that the doctor will be focusing on the treatment and will telling the assistant to change the program accordingly to the clinical situation. While here, you need to go in all the units or all the programs that you have. So this increases your focus on the treatment and transferring this particular duty to your assistant. So interesting to see that this base, as I told you, communicate to the software by Bluetooth. And in fact, you could use 2 or 3 or 4 bases to one unit. Obviously, every time you connect another base to the unit, you have to disconnect the other ones. So it's 1-to-1. However, the interesting thing it is that if you had actually incorporated the latest, let's say, setting into this motor, although I'm far away and disconnect to the unit, the motor will be working with the latest memory that was given to that particular motor. So there are some people that would like to have just one unit and several motors. There is a possibility here up to 99 bases. I mean, it's a lot, but anyway, that's possible to do. Let's go to the software and let me turn on the unit. So we're going to see a nice intro of FKG logo, a beautiful picture from the Swiss mountains. You can change this. And here you can see the first image that you have here. It is actually the standard mode. Well, just to tell you a little bit about up here. Up here it is showing to you that you are communicate to this base. The Bluetooth is on, no sound for the motor and full battery. And the basis is basically the same, full battery, some sound, and it's working very well. Now, on the base here, you can see that this unit has 3 main modes and 1 setting mode. The first one we call the standard mode, where all the files, all the sequence will be here, and I'm going to show you soon. The second one is the apex locator, only apex locator. And then the third one, it is the so-called combined apex locator and the standard. So that means standard and apex locator together. That means that this motor will be connected to the apex locator and will be communicating to the base. Let's go back to the standard mode. Here in the standard mode, by pressing up here, you're going to see that there are sequences and files from FKG. And these are all the available FKG files that you have in the company. and the list it is over here. So if you start from the top, XP4000, XP Rise Retreatment, XP Rise Treatment, Raise Evil, R Motion, Finisher, Finisher R, Pre-Raise, Raise I Raise, Bio Raise, D Raise, and Sensipast. So every time my assistant comes here and push one button, you can see that basically the speed, the torque are already embedded or programmed into the software. I can change this, or the assistant can change this. For instance, XP Rise, which contain 3 files with 3 different settings. For each file, there are different settings, as you can see over here. You can slide with your finger the different files, and you see it changes the speed and the torque, right? The other thing that you can do if you don't want to slide like this is to press on the top of the name and jump from one and another file if there are several files. For instance, this one, and I can go back to DR1, and you can see here. Here you can see that it is actually rotating in the clockwise rotation to 1000 RPM. The torque, it will reverse when it goes over or close to the torque that is the maximum you had predetermined. However, from this, if you want to change this setting, you are able to do it directly over here. How do? I just take my finger and slide. But the moment I do this, the unit will have a warning here. Are you sure you want to change the presets? Yes. And I can go here and change. Now, the maximum speed of this motor, that's why it calls X4000, it's 4000 RPM. But why so fast? Now, I actually clinically, I use the 4000 here, for instance, to explore the entrance of root canal with discovery bursts, Muntz bursts, round bursts. I can use with Gates Glidden. So if I use this, I'm going to program specifically for that particular speed. But you can change your speed directly into the sequence that you have predetermined by FKG. Now, you can see that there is a little arrow here. This shows you where the standard speed should be, right? So you can place plus and minus. And here you can see that the standard torque also it is 1.5. Interesting to see that as I change the speed, the torque changes as well. That means more speed, less torque. Some people have the feeling that the torque will save you before the file break. But the important thing to understand that the torque is there to guarantee that your speed will be maintained during the instrumentation. The moment the forces on the wall start to increase and the motor is not able to keep the same speed, then the torque limit will reach. And that's what you hear, that it makes some sound. Sometimes it does the auto reverse or stop. But it's important that we should not have the feeling that the torque will save us all the time, because the file can be resistant to different parts of the wall. It can be in the coronal part, in the middle part, in the apical part. We assume that the safety is that the file will stop when you have an increase in torsional stress on the apical part of the instrument, but that's not the reality. Sometimes this can happen in the middle part, in the coronal part of the instrument, really depending the size, the shape, the taper of the file. So that's important. Now, FKG file works well with torques below 1 to 1.5 because of the geometry of the files, because the cutting efficiency of the files, but it just gives you an idea that the speed cannot be maintained, and that's why the torque limited will tell you that now we cannot hold that speed as is showing into the monitor, and that's why it started to reverse. All right? And you can see over here, which is two icons, the sequences that are predetermined by FKG, and then the next one, it is a doctor with a system. So here you can actually pre-program your sequence, and I'm going to show you how to do it, which is very, very easy. You come to the settings. Here there are different types of features in the setting where I'm coming back to you afterwards. But the first one, it is customize your library. If I press here, you're going to see that there are three icons here: system, sequences, and the doctors, which is empty right now. Now here, interesting to see that all these units here, or all the sequences that you have here, there is a submenu which you can press it, and here there are dots which you can choose, right, and unchoose it, or you can choose all of them. And this facilitates, for instance, if the doctor doesn't want to have all the sequence that FKG has, but maybe just one or two of this sequence to the doctor's name, they can actually choose it and transfer to their doctor's sequences. Or you can choose only one of these files to that particular sequence. So I'm going to show you quickly here. And the other thing it is that if I press this, which are the sequence, here you can see there are some stars. This is nice because if I, for instance, I'm not using XP4D, I use most of the time, I'm not saying myself, but if a doctor wants to use most of the time the XP Rise more than XP4D, it just press the star. And for instance, I like to use also the SensiPass pretty often, right? So what happened is that when I go back to the standard unit and I press over here, you're going to see that the XP Rise treatment and SensiPass comes as the first place, because that makes it easier for the assistant to go right to the sequence that you use most of the time. Let me go back to the settings here. And here is interesting also to see that if I want to use some of these files and create my own sequence, I'm able to do and transfer this for the doctor's sequence. For instance, I would like to use in a sequence, for instance, pre-race files. Okay, just an opening file, which is an orifice opener, so I choose this. And then what I can do, I can add to my sequence. So this comes directly to the doctor sequence, but I have to create a sequence first. Let's say Debelian 1, whatever, or sequence 1 or 2. So I press OK, and then I go here and I choose Debelian 1 and I add. What happened is that what I had chosen before there, it appears here pre-race. Now I can go back again, and after pre-race file, I like to use, for instance, the XP Rise treatment, and I put all the files, the same things, add to the sequence. I choose Debelian here, and then I add. And so now on the Debelian, there are two different types of files: pre-race, XP Rise. And for instance, if I want to add a SensiPass, for instance, so I can go over here, choose it, add to the sequence, press Debelian, and then add. And now Debelian number 1 has 3 files: pre-race, XP Rise, and SensiPass. This is the pre-setup. And interesting to see that when I go back here and I go up into the sequence, and if I press the doctors, so Debelian 1, and here you can see the 3 files that I had chosen: the pre-race, right? The XP rise treatment and the Sensipast. And then everything would be very easy for you to look at, and or you can also slide like that with all the presettings that you have from before. So this is very, very nice. Now, if I want to create my own sequence without having all the FKG files, for instance, I use a Wave 1 or ProTaper, whatever file, I can create a sequence. And I can create a sequence saying Debelian, let's say Debelian 2, right? And in Debelian 2, I can actually choose this and create a file. So I can see here ProTaper, whatever, and then I put OK. Now in the ProTaper, if I choose the ProTaper, right, I have now to choose whatever speed, torque that the manufacturer gives it to me. ProTaper normally we use as a rotation, but here you can see, if I press this button here, I can see clockwise, counterclockwise, reciprocating, ATR, T-mode plus, T-mode alpha. All these features here are interesting. For instance, if I take the T-mode, now let me go back once again. If I go to reciprocation, here you can see that I can choose the speed of the reciprocation. I can choose the torque of the reciprocation. And here, F forward, R backwards. So I can press here and I can change the angulation that I'm going to have in this particular, sequence, right? And I can do forward like this. So here I have 70 and 60, which is not, real for ProTaper, but just an example for you. And if I want to have the T mode, very interesting, this is Terauchi mode, which actually gives me a forward, back and forth, as you can see here, 90 degrees, and then show you that if I click it again, the motor will go in the reverse mode 90 degrees. So that's very interesting because this I also can change whatever. If I want to do back and forth, 45 degrees, for instance, 40 degrees, right? And if I want to do in a reverse mode like this, I can do it, which you change one and the other one. And the interesting thing it is that when I press once, the unit will go one direction, and if I press it again, it will do it again. So I have just to save over here. Yes, I want to save this setting. I go back to my library, and now I have the Debelian 2, which is going to, now I can hear the noise. And then if I press it again, then it shows a reverse mode. So that's interesting. With one click, I change it from one speed or one movement to another one. So this is basically the features about the presetting that you have. This is the doctors, and this is the regular sequence that you have into the unit. And there's many things that you can do it. As I show you, you can go to different types of features that are here, T plus, T alpha, ATR, many things that it gives you a huge amount of possibilities in this motor that's almost like infinitive. So it's very nice. So now after that, after we had explored that kind of sequence, I go to the apex locator.